Hello, folks. I really don't like covering this sort of thing, but this is important because of what's going on with South Africa and President Trump's executive order and media lying in South Africa, politicians lying about it's a safe environment for people in South Africa. It's not. For all South Africans, things are bad. Crime is rampant, 23,000 murders per year. And that's more than the United States by 50%, a country that's one-sixth of our size. It's a pretty frightening situation for South Africans, gender-based violence. It's a wonderful country with wonderful people, but the lawlessness is out of control, corruption, witnesses being murdered left and right, Babita Deokaran assassinated simply for doing her job. It's pretty frightening stuff, but white South Africans are really under siege despite the lies of the government. And a perfect example of this is that you have something called the South African Human Rights Commission, which is supposed to ensure the dignity of South Africans by taking people to court for saying things that are wildly inappropriate or racist or attacking the dignity of human beings. There's a gentleman named Nota Baloyi, who's a music industry executive, who said the most horrific things we reported on last month in a conversation in which he said that white women were genetically inferior to black women. They can't bear children. He said that white people are genetically inferior because they have Neanderthal DNA. And he said that white people need to be treated like dogs and trained like dogs to behave. The videos are out there. This is not my claim. This is horrible what this man said. And he's at it again. And what happened the first time? Well, the South African Human Rights Commission, under great pressure from South Africans, finally intervened after ignoring the situation for several days, and they said that they were investigating it. Well, they said that they're hoping for a decision that leads to him making a public apology and some retraining about racial justice or relations between races. This is nonsense. The South African government destroyed the life of Vicky Momberg, a woman who was nearly carjacked and was in shock when she inappropriately and insultingly referred to a black police officer using the K word repeatedly. The woman was in shock, was never considered. She was convicted and sent to prison as a felon for the word she used. She didn't assault anyone. She didn't murder anybody. She didn't intimidate or threaten anybody. She simply reacted while under shock and went to prison for the words she said. Now, I submit to you that a society that legislates language is not a legitimate society. A government that is afraid of words is an illegitimate, cowardly government. However, with that in mind, that is the law of the land in South Africa. This gentleman is saying the most horrific things that harm the dignity of white South Africans, in fact, white people all over the world. And he suffered no consequences for it. This has happened well over a month ago, and we see no update from the South African Human Rights Commission whatsoever. And you won't see it. So now he acts with impunity, and listen to what he says now about white folks. Listen to what he has to say now. He threatens to kill white people, and then he tries to back away from it. No, I didn't say this. Now, to his credit, the host of the program distances himself from this immediately, which is smart because anyone that stands with those calling for violence against people, but especially against minorities, is a reprehensible human being. Let's take a look at what he has to say.
White people came here. They need to assimilate to our culture, not the other way around. It's bad enough we speak their language with a proficiency that they cannot even muster.
White people came here. They need to assimilate. Ostensibly, he means South Africa. That's the interview. Well, so did black people. Black people aren't indigenous to South Africa. The Khoi and San are indigenous to South Africa. And that's a loose term, indigenous. They weren't even there, a couple 100,000 years ago. Other hominids were. So if anybody's indigenous, it's Khoi and San, not the tribes who came down the Great Rift Valley about 1,600 years ago. You're not indigenous. You came there too. You didn't fully adopt the Khoi and San cultures, so maybe you're the interloper there, my friend. And besides, this dude looks an awful lot like he might be Khoi himself. Look at the freckles. I wonder how much European DNA he's got in his body there. Interesting to note. Look at that light skin color. Dude looks like he might just be part European. The very group he's rubbishing. Yeah, and wow. The insulting comments that he speaks English better than white people do. Well, Afrikaners is not their first language, so maybe he's got a point there. But English-speaking South Africans, he speaks it better. What a condescending asshat this guy is. Let's listen a little bit more what he's got to say.
They still need to assimilate to our culture. They need to assimilate to Ubuntu. That's the only way in which we can coexist within this environment. Otherwise, we will slaughter all of them, drive them to the sea, literally.
They need to assimilate. They need to adopt Ubuntu. Otherwise, he will murder them. He will drive them to the sea. Seriously? This guy just called for violence against white people? Murdering them? Now, it's not hyperbole. It's a message. It's a clear message to others to act. What else can you take it? A reasonable, cogent person could only take from this man hates white people and that he's calling for them to be killed. Now, this is different than Julius Malema singing Kill the Boer song, which he can at least claim as a struggle song and a heritage thing from the struggle against apartheid, which is all horse manure, but he can claim that at least, and the courts have ruled that's the case, shockingly. But what is this guy defending? How can he possibly support what he's saying here? Wow, if you don't become black, you'll be murdered, is what he's saying. And then watch the coward back away from it and try to cover himself because he realized what he just stepped into. He realized he just stepped in the crap that could lead to a prosecution. So let's see what he's got to say from here.
It might not be me. It might not be me calling for it.
I'm not a part of that thing. I'm just allowing him to talk.
No.
It might not be me. You see the coward backing away? This scrawny little runt who has a big mouth and makes racist threats against people. But he's not man enough to step up and defend his threats. No one should threaten anyone else. It's a criminal act. But the host says, hey, it's not me. I'm just letting him talk. Smart move, brother. Don't be associated with this nonsense because this conduct is reprehensible.
In fact, if white people are being driven to the sea, I'm least likely to be in the front lines driving them to the sea.
Well, on that point, we do agree, Nota. If white people are being driven to the sea and murdered by black South Africans, ostensibly, that's the argument you're making, you won't be at the front of the line.
Right? Because of my disposition.
What is your disposition?
As in, I'm a privileged black person in this country.
So why would you want to drive white people to the sea if you're just as privileged as they are?
Gotta love the host. That's brilliant. Well, why would you want to drive white people to sea if you're privileged? You're rich. Yeah, it's unbelievable. The host is spot on. What a stupid comment from this guy. But hey, stupid is as stupid does. Life's like a box of chocolates, right? Stupid people should wear signs. That way you wouldn't ask them questions. And the host, well, you definitely got the controversial guy on here. I bet this gets millions of views on his program.
You want to drive white people to the sea if you're just as privileged as they are?
The majority of black people, right, have been oppressed by white people and the white system.
The majority of black people have been oppressed by the white system. What white system is that? Are you talking about the apartheid system, the National Party? Most South Africans weren't even alive during apartheid. Most South Africans were born after apartheid. They've only known one governance party, and it's been the African National Congress, except for briefly in some municipalities and in the Western Cape for an extended period of time. The rest of the country has been under complete dominance of the ANC since 1994. A majority black government. A constitution promulgated and implemented by a majority black government. If there's oppression, they're being oppressed by the African National Congress, not by whites. How are whites oppressing? They don't control the levers of power. They don't have the sole authority for the use of force. They do not run the courts. They do not run the government. They do not run the military. It's run by majority black South Africans. And this dingbat doorknob is saying that majority of blacks have been oppressed by whites. That's factually a lie. Folks, the purpose for doing this video is to show you what South Africans have to put up with. This gentleman will suffer no consequences. Vicky Momberg was put in prison as a convicted felon, her liberty taken from her because she used a slur against a black police officer after nearly being carjacked and murdered. And she was in shock. This guy's not in shock. He's sitting down comfortably, spewing his racial hatred, threatening the death of white people because of his lies and his distorted worldview. This is a dangerous, dangerous precedent to allow people like this to spew racial hatred like this. Now, in America, we would just ignore some idiot like this. We don't have restrictions against speech, although he could be charged with inciting violence because that's a very tenuous line where what he said there here in the U.S. In a state, he could be charged with inciting violence. But if you want to be an idiot and say racist things, that's your prerogative. We simply don't associate with morons. We ostracize them. We don't invite them to community events, and people don't associate with them. But in South Africa, it's a crime. Where's the outrage? Where's the bench warrant for his arrest? There's nothing happening in South Africa. Whites are not in any danger. Really.
If at any point they decide that they want to drive people to the sea, I will not discourage them.
So he says he's going to kill white people. Then he says, well, no, not me. Not me. It'll be other people. I'm not going to be in front of that. But then he'll do nothing to protect white people. Well, what kind of human being are you? I spent my life defending white, brown, black people all over the world, saving lives, white, brown, and black. Why would you not intervene to protect people whose lives are in jeopardy? What kind of scumbag are you? Apparently of the highest order. Well, there you have it, folks. Nota Baloyi, once again, running off at the mouth, suffering no consequences for his actions. The arrogance, the cheek. This is what South Africans are dealing with. This is just one example of someone who's actually well known, a public celebrity. And this is what he gets away with. So when Cyril Ramaphosa tells the world that Donald Trump is mistaken, that there's nothing wrong, we don't even have to talk about the 140 plus race-based laws in South Africa or the exclusion from employment or education. You simply need to look no further than this sort of nonsense. What say you, South Africa? And for the race baiters and the race haters that are going to come in here and post their garbage, footsack. An objective, cogent, lucid person would look at this and say, this person is acting the fool and is saying dangerous things that endanger people's lives. That's the bottom line. Cogent, lucid people will look at this and go, this is wrong. Someone needs to talk to this gentleman and stop this. But it won't happen. Cheers.